In London, however, an expert in microfinance describes how microcredit banks use the stories of their accomplishments.
The microfinance institutions publicise the tiny number of successes, but what they don't tell us is the much, much larger number of failures. We don't tend to see the bad side of the story, we only get to see the small, the successful side of the story.
Grameen Bank's headquarters in Dhaka is a material proof of its success. The building is one of the tallest in the capital, and the Western world has contributed enormously to this success.
There were a lot of grants that were coming in directly, so I started to see that there were various places where subsidies were coming in. And so over time, in this period that I was looking at in the early 90s and mid-90s, there was about $175 million worth of subsidy that was coming in.
And Norway has been one of the most generous contributors. Almost $70 million of taxpayers' money has been donated from the aid agency NORAD to the Nobel laureate's Grameen Bank. One of the world's largest NGOs working to fight poverty has chosen not to offer microcredit to the poor.
You go to Dhaka city, you go to any other big cities, you'll find buildings, beautiful buildings, hundreds of thousands of people working for these organizations. This is not a question of right or wrong. Definitely this microfinance can give you a lot of return. But our question is, who should be benefiting from return? Is it the poor people or the organizations who are practicing microfinance?
Ladies and gentlemen, we are talking to Professor Milford Bateman of the Pula University from Croatia. And Professor Milford's latest book is available on Amazon. You are seeing the image of this book now. You can buy it online. And Professor Milford Bateman is one of the considered as the top authors, one of the top authors in the world who has been doing research for decades on microcredit and microfinance. In your 2012 paper titled Microfinance and the Illusion of Development, you have said, from Havres to Nemesis in 30 years, you have said, the contemporary model of microfinance has roots in a small local experiment in Bangladesh in the early 1970s, undertaken by Dr. Muhammad Yunus, the US-educated Bangladeshi economist and further 26 Nobel Peace Prize co-recipient. Yunus' idea of supporting tiny informal micro enterprises and self-employment as the solution to the widespread poverty rapidly caught on, and by the 1990s, the concept of microfinance was the international development community's highest profile and most generously funded poverty reduction policy. Neoclassical economic theorists and neoliberal policymakers both fully concurred with the microfinance model's celebrations of self-help and individual entrepreneur and its implicit antipathy to any form of state intervention. The immense feel-good appeal of microfinance is essentially based on the widespread assumption that simply reaching the poor with tiny microcredit will automatically establish a sustainable economy and social development trajectory, a trajectory animated by the poor themselves acting as micro-enterprises, getting involving in tiny income and generating activities. We reject this view. However, we generate some narrow positive short-run outcomes for a few lucky individuals. These positive outcomes are very limited in numbers and anyway swamped by much wider, longer run downsides and opportunity costs at the community and national levels, unquote. Now, here is my question in this case is, does it mean, microcredit or microfinance activity cannot offer financial benefit and self-reliance to poor people in the world?
No, it doesn't. As I said earlier, there's a huge difference between the type of microcredit model that is promoted by the World Bank and the IMF and the US government and is exemplified by Grameen and BRAC and ASA and all the others all over the world. They are commercial entities. They exist to make a profit, and that means that they don't have the interests of the poor in mind. We've seen in so many countries the exploitation, the profiteering, the over-indebtedness, and all sorts of other problems have emerged. And that is because their primary responsibility is to their shareholders. And one of the problems we have, particularly I'm doing some research on Cambodia, is that when all the microfinance institutions are owned by foreign investors, then there's not even a sort of an interest in local development because they don't live in that country. And so all they're interested in is the bottom line. How much profit, how much dividend, and how much can we sell this microfinance institution for in 2 or 3 years' time to make an even bigger profit than we're making at the moment. So that's one model. That's the model that I think we both understand and are critiquing. But the other model, as I said earlier, is credit unions, financial cooperatives, cooperative banks. These are institutions owned by the community, very successful in Europe, Scandinavia, successful initially in America, successful all over the world, but they've never been promoted by the institutions that have power, like the World Bank, US government, all those other institutions. In fact, they've gone out of their way to destroy successful cooperative institutions to convert them into microfinance institutions. And I saw even a tender the other day from about 20 years ago asking for a company to help in Bangladesh to convert cooperative financial institutions, successful ones, managing okay, into commercial bodies. They were actually facilitating the transition from community ownership to private and mainly foreign ownership. So that's their idea. So the poor definitely need financial services. They need to be financially included. But the $64,000 question is under what framework? Is it going to be under a market-driven, commercially oriented framework or under a more development, community-owned framework? My opinion would be that the community-owned, more developmental framework would be far better and work for the poor. And particularly because we have this new innovation coming on called fintech, financial technology, where it means that all the branches of financial institutions you can get rid of because everything will be done on your mobile phone. It is so important that that power over the financial system is somehow socialized, somehow in the hands of the people it should be serving rather than in the hands of investors. And already we're seeing some horrendous stories from Kenya, South Africa, and other places of the power of financial technology in the hands of a small number of people is creating new imbalances and new forms of inequality in the world. We need inclusion, and that will include using fintech in a publicly owned, community-owned way in order that the benefits of technology and this new financial technology are used to the benefits of the poor in particular, but to everyone rather than simply investors.